Hello guys, this is Sandeep Naval from Java Desk, and I'd like to welcome you all to our next tutorial on access specifier in Java. So guys, I have already given you a brief introduction about what access specifier are. Basically, I told you that in beginning tutorials that access specifier are some keywords which specify or which defines the accessibility of your data members as well as methods or classes. What I mean to say that it tells us whether our defined data member, classes or methods are accessible or not. Suppose that this is our class A, which has a main method and a data member here. Now let's first discuss the types of access specifier. There are 4 types of access specifier in Java. The first one is private, second is default, third one is protected, and fourth one is public. And how we define our access specifier. Suppose that this is our data member and we want to define its accessibility, then we use our access specifier keyword here, like public and like private, like protected also we can do it. Similarly we can do in methods also, like as you can see I have declared here the main method is already declared public because it is easily accessible by the JVM. If it would not be public, the JVM would never access the main method, and hence it would be difficult for the JVM to call the main method, and our program could not run. Similarly, likewise, what I mean to say that we define or we give here our access specifier to make our data members, methods or classes to make it accessible, or we can also restrict it. Restrict in the sense, if we make it private, we can restrict it. I'll define how we can restrict, and I'll talk about everything. Before that, I told you that there are 4 types of access specifier: public, private, protected and default. But I did not talk about default. Now talking about default, if we are not defining any keyword as default, suppose if I have kept here public, it is okay, it is defined as public. But if I am not defining any access specifier here, that means the integer a is default. For default, we do not provide any keyword. This is how we define or declare any default access specifier or data members. So now talking about we shall talk various things on access specifier on an individual basis. Before that, I would like to tell you that I'll show you a diagram. This is the diagram, and we will talk about the restriction level. We will talk about the accessibility, where they can be accessed and where they can be restricted. Before that, I would like to tell you that whether class can be public, private, protected or not, whether constructor, variable or method can be public, private, protected or default or not. So talking about the class first. Can class be public? Yeah, class can be public. I already told you in before tutorial that class can be public, and in a single Java file there can be only one public class. Talking about the class as private, we cannot make our class as a private. We cannot even make our class as a protected, and default is allowed. Default is allowed in class. So let's have a look at our program. Suppose this is our program and here is our class A, and since no any access specifier is allowed here, that means this class A is default. And if we run it, we won't get any error, since we are doing this from the first day of our class. That means class A, class can be declared as default. Now talking about the public, we even discussed this. Talking about the public, it will also not give us any error. Hence we can say that class can also be public. Talking about the private now, I told you that class cannot be private. So now if we compile it, we will get a compile time error, and hence we can say that class cannot be private And similarly you can do it for protected also. You can never declare a class as private or protected. It will give us compile time error. Now talking about the constructor. Constructor can be public, constructor can be private, constructor can be protected, and constructor can even be declared as default. So you do it yourself. I cannot do all the programs. If you have any confusion, let me know. But we know how to declare a constructor. We know about constructor. We have already studied in previous tutorials. So now you try access constructor, program a constructor with access specifiers, which will tell you whether constructor can be public, private, protected or not. So talking about the variables, that is data members. Data members can be public, data members can be private, data members can be protected, as well as data members can be default. And I'll show you an example here. So make it public. Okay, I'll show you program individually for now. Just let us discuss this table first, and then we'll move to other tables. So I told you that variables are allowed to be public, private, protected, and default. Similarly for methods can also be public, methods can also be private, methods can also be protected, and methods can also be default. So only class here has some restriction, that class cannot be private and protected. The rest of the public and default can be applied with class. So now talking about the individually about the access specifiers, like let's talk about the private first. So private, okay, so we are going to talk about the accessibility of data members or classes, or methods. So talking about the first access specifier, which is private. So private means private is used to provide restriction, like if I declare any, okay, I have declared a variable as private, and let me tell you that private is accessible within the same class very easily. Like I have a class here called A, and I want to access the variable or data member A within the same class, and I won't get any error. I have to create an object. I already told you how to create an object to access any variable, and now I am accessing that A data member with object, and now I'm compiling it, and now I'll run it. Since we did not get any error, that we can say that private is accessible within the same class. But now if I make another class here which has actually, suppose now I am trying to access the private data member of B in A. So if I try to do that, I'll get a compile time error, because private data members or methods of one class is not accessible in other classes. So here what I'm doing is I'm accessing the private data members of B in class A. So here I will need to create object of B, and now if I try to access that data member of A, I'll get a compile time error, and I'll show you how compiler gives me an error. See, A has private access in B, and system.out.println object.a. The compiler is telling that this data member A has private access specifier, so you cannot use it in other classes. Similarly for method also we can do that. We can create a method as private, and if we try to access it, in other classes, we will get a compile time error. So what I mean to say that private data members or methods are not accessible in other classes. So we talked about the same class. Private in a same class is allowed. Private in subclasses. Subclasses means its children classes we learn during the inheritance is not allowed. Private within the same package, I mean in within the same package we discussed what package is, how packages are defined, how packages are actually created, and what I mean to say that private data members of methods within the same package, I mean within the same package but in other classes is also not allowed. Outside the package means in other classes, outside the package is also not allowed. So only private is allowed in a single class in which it is defined or declared. Now talking about the protected data members or methods are allowed in the same class, are allowed within the subclasses. So subclasses, I will give you the example of the subclasses when I will explain you the inheritance. So for now you just know that subclasses are those classes which actually extend its parent classes, any other classes, and in that classes only protected can be used. So protected can even be used within the same package, classes within the same package, but protected cannot be used within the classes of outside the package. What I mean to say that protected specifiers are only accessed within the subclasses, only within the subclasses. If any class is extending a class, a parent class, then I'll tell you, let me explain. So this is a class B and this is a class A. If it extends, for now you just understand this. If you have any confusion, you have to refer to the inheritance. What actually inheritance means, if any class A is extending a class, this is a parent class and now this A is a child class or subclass. So now if I make this protected, then this protected can be easily accessible within the class A. Now if we run it, we won't get any error and we will see we got the output. What I mean to say that this is a subclass because it is extending class B, and since it is protected, we can easily use or access A in class A because class A is the subclass of class B. So now talking about the public keyword, what I want to tell you that public is actually, as you know by its name only, public is public, so anyone can access it, whether it is in the same class or a subclass or outside the package or inside the package, outside the class, in other classes, anywhere you can access public data members or methods anywhere. So we don't need to do this public one. I'll tell you about the default now. So suppose we have declared a data member. So talking about the default is accessible in the same class, not it is actually also allowed in the subclass, but there is a condition. I have written here not allowed because there is a condition that subclass, if that subclass is inside the package only, then it is allowed. If that subclass is outside the package, it is not allowed. It is not allowed in subclasses which is outside the package. And I have told you that here inside the package default is allowed. Again outside the package, see here it is defined that default in outside the package not allowed. So this diagram also shows you something like there is a class A and there are something like data members and methods. And talking about the private first, the private element of B is not accessible in A. This is within the same package. In class A and class B are in same package, and class C is in another package. So this is actually a brief recap of what we discussed. So talking about again the whole thing within this, with this diagram I will explain you that private data members of B is not accessible in A, whether it is in same class or same package, or whether it is in another package. So private is always restricted, it is not allowed to use in other classes. Public, whether it is in same package, same class or other package, public is always available for other classes. Protected, so talking about the protected can be accessible in the same package as well as in same some subclasses, but it cannot be used in other package. There is a condition, it can be used in other package only if it is a subclass of its parent class. Talking about the default is always accessible within the same package, not outside the package. So this is what we discussed today, and I already told about the package before, and you should go for the program now. And now I just want to explain you an important concept about the restriction level of specifier, because you need this while we will study the inheritance. So the restriction level, according to the restriction level, the higher restriction is in private, because it is not accessible outside the class. After that, second one is default, because default cannot be accessible outside the package. Third one is protected, because protected can only be accessed within the package and in its subclasses, not outside the package. And last one is public, which is non-restrictive, because public can be accessed worldwide or anywhere we like, because public is public, it is available for everyone. So I have clearly made this diagram that if we move from downward to upward, the restriction level will increase, and if we move from upward to downward, the restriction level will decrease. So guys, don't get confused. And I told you that whether the class, constructor, variable, method can be private, public or protected or not. And likewise I defined where the private data members or method can be accessible within the class, subclass, package or outside. Similarly for protected, public and unspecified also, I showed you the program for protected, not for for protected, public and private. And the default is always we have always been using default, and we have always been doing that, so I did not do. But you guys have to run all the programs. You do as much as coding you can do, because coding can help you understand the concept and make your vision clear. So guys, what I meant to say that do as much as program as you can, and this will help you to increase your coding capability, And for today, this much only. And if you have any confusion regarding anything about the access specifier, I mean today's tutorial or any tutorial, you please let us know by commenting in the comment section below. And if you are new to our channel, please subscribe to our channel. If you like the video, like and share with your friends. And if you never want to miss any update from our channel, please hit the bell icon. And guys, please like our Facebook page, because we are always updating IT news as well as some programs that will help you increase your concepts. So please like our Facebook page, Java Desk. And if you guys have any query or any help, you need any help regarding your assignments or college projects, please mail us at javadesk20@gmail.com. And stay tuned for further videos. Thank you guys.